to a Hope 1032 podcast.
Hey you, yeah you. Keep listening to the end of this episode for your chance to win a special treat on us. We'll tell you more after the episode. As followers of Jesus, in whom all things were made, we acknowledge the Darug people as the traditional custodians of the country of where this podcast is recorded. We acknowledge their continuing connection to the land and waters and thank them for protecting this land and its ecosystems since time immemorial. We pay our respects to elders past, present and future, and we extend that respect to all First Nations peoples listening today.
Hope Book Club with Georgia and Simone. Because life's just better with a book.
Hi, I'm Georgia and welcome to episode 64 of the Hope Book Club podcast. You may notice today I'm without my right-hand woman, my co-host Simone. She's feeling a bit under the weather, so I'm going to take over the mic just for today. But never fear, you're still going to hear her voice in the podcast because we're starting a new mini-series today highlighting some incredible Aussie Christian authors. We're going to speak to two of them today, so you're going to hear those interviews real soon. We talked about their writing processes, what inspires them, and what their favourite Christian reads are. You might want to get out a pen and paper or get the notes app on your phone because there is going to be a lot of great suggestions that you can add to your TBR pile. Now, this first interview, Simone absolutely loved. If you are an avid listener of this podcast, you know that Simone loves C.S. Lewis. She loves Narnia. So it was an absolute honour to be able to speak to Trudy Adams, who is a young adult Christian author, about her new fantasy-style book, which includes some amazing elements of faith. Here is that interview now. Our guest on the pod today is the multiple Australian Christian Book of the Year award winner, Trudy Adams. She is the author of the Crowned Guardian series, a YA adventure series with intricate twists and powerful themes of faith and endurance. Trudy is also a speaker and a community services worker whose faith plays a central role in her writing. Trudy, thank you so much for being here.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Trudy, I've got to ask, when did you first become passionate about writing?
I loved writing from a very young age. So all through school, I loved to write and I loved to read. And I actually started what would become my first book when I was 17. So I was still in year 12. And I remember sitting on the library steps with a notepad, sketching out some ideas for characters and a plot with no thought of ever becoming published. But that turned into Desolate Beauty, which became published when I was 22 a few years later. So writing's been part of my life ever since I can remember, I think, as well as reading. So I've just always loved it.
Yeah, that's so great. What drew you specifically to Christian fiction? I guess faith has always been a part of your life. Is it something that you just gravitated to naturally, or was it something that you really made an intentional effort to incorporate into your writing?
Yeah, a bit of both, I think. I went to a Christian school and I grew up in a Christian family, so it's always been, as you said, a part of my life. And because I went to a Christian school, I also had access to a lot of Christian books in our library, so I was reading a lot of those as well. So I think for me, because I loved writing and my faith was so important to me, it just seemed like a natural fit to write Christian fiction. But also, I think because for me, there's an element of it being a little bit more meaningful in some ways. So being able to explore some challenges that people face, but with a faith-based element in that helps people to think about how God can help them to overcome challenges.
Yeah, I love that. And, you know, it is such a niche market, especially I think as an Australian author. What has your writing and publishing process been like sort of within that market?
It has been quite challenging, to be honest. So it's particularly because a lot of Christian fiction is American or from overseas. So as you said, Australian Christian fiction is quite a niche market, and finding a publisher for that was certainly a challenge. My current publisher is an American publisher, and there's obviously some differences there in terms of grammar and spelling, so that's been a bit of a challenge. But yeah, so even finding an overseas publisher, while that's really good, then having that opportunity for thorough distribution in Australia, where the audience is, then becomes the next challenge. So it's certainly something I'm still trying to navigate and learn about, and hopefully that's something that will become easier in the future.
Do they make you do American and Australian editions based on spelling?
No, I've been quite lucky. They've been quite tolerant of me sticking to Australian grammar. I just can't have any of my books having Z in words like organisation. It's got to be Australian. So thankfully they've been quite supportive of that.
What actually inspired you to write this particular book in this particular series?
So The Crowned Guardians is the third book in the Armoured Butterfly series, and it's, I guess, what inspired me to write the series overall is wanted to write a series that was about the battles that we face, but using a historical adventure setting for that, with just a little bit of fantasy in that, to paint a broader picture of battles that represent our day-to-day challenges. And I wanted to write stories that have a faith element, but that someone with no faith could still pick up and read and either think about the faith metaphors that are in that, or and interpret it in their own way, or hopefully just lead to some discussions around that. And I wanted to look at having a strong female warrior character, but also one who has issues with fear and her own confidence, and who struggles with that. So something that is very, in the face of battle, but struggles with human struggles just like we do. So the story is just as much about her own internal battles as it is about her external battles.
For those who haven't heard of it or read it, what generally is the series about?
So the story follows Adalia. So she's the main character, and she comes from a noble background, but has a real skill in being a warrior. And it's about the people called the Zalims, who come against her kingdom and against other kingdoms in the surrounding area, who follow an evil god and have worship an evil god that is not the main god, and who are seeking to overtake the kingdom with their sort of evil practices, I suppose. So she is standing against that with her allies to fight back against this, and to use her faith and the faith of those around her to stand strong against these people who are trying to destroy and take over the kingdom.
That sounds great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And, I guess if you talked about sort of what inspired and sort of, wanting to portray all these different things, but is there one thing you really hope your readers come away with after reading the series?
Yeah, definitely. I think the one thing would be, I hope that people come away with, is that fear doesn't have to stop you from being victorious. And I think that is Adalia's main learning as well, is even though she experiences fear, she can rise above that and still be victorious. So it doesn't have to stop us from achieving what we want to achieve, that we can overcome.
Is this going to be the last one in the series, or is there more to come?
Well, you never know, but at the moment, I think this last book might be the end of Adalia's journey, but I might still use the world and have those characters in the background and do like a spin-off, perhaps in a bit of time in the future, and a different protagonist. And so there's always scope there, I think, for something new. I don't think I'm quite done with this world I've created.
Yeah, I love a good spin-off, honestly. I love, as much as we can learn about a world, just love that.
Especially once the world's been created, like you want to delve into the areas you didn't get to see.
Yeah, and the benefit of having extra books is that you get to deepen that every time and add extra thoughts and layers, and I enjoy that as the writer as well.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic, Trudy. Now, look, we have been talking about our favourite Christian reads in this podcast episode particularly, so wanted to turn those questions to you as well. What is your favourite Christian novel and why?
If I had to pick something, I'd probably pick Captivating, which by Stasi Eldridge, which I read as a teenager, and which just always stayed with me, about the journey of a woman and how women reflect God's image. So I really got a lot out of that one. But I think there's so many. Like, I loved the Narnia series by C.S. Lewis as well.
You're talking to the biggest Narnia fan in Simone right now.
Yeah, because I love that kind of fantastical metaphors that teach us about God. So I loved those series as well. So there's definitely a number. I have quite a few on my bookshelf, and it's very hard to pick a favourite.
There's a lot, but is there a particular author, one author that you absolutely, Christian author that you loved, and again, why?
I think the author I've probably read the most about is Joyce Meyer, actually, in terms of her books around living day-to-day life. So I think the reason I love her writings is because it's so practical. This is, she's so honest about this is who we are and how we think, and this is what we need to do to reflect God's image a little bit more, and really practical with her tips in terms of what we can do in our day-to-day lives. So I've learned a lot from reading her books.
Oh, I think we've got a lot of Joyce Meyer fans listening to the podcast as well. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
Well, The Crowned Guardian, the latest in the Armoured Butterfly series, explores the enduring power of friendship, the place of courage, and the redemptive grace found in self-sacrifice. It's written by Trudy Adams. Thank you so much for being here, Trudy, on the podcast. Just so appreciate your time today.
No worries. I really thank you for the opportunity to be here.
And you can find more of Trudy's work at her website, that is trudyadams.com.au, Koorong, and wherever you get good books. How good was that interview with Trudy Adams? I just found it so interesting to hear about her writing process and how faith can be so heavily integrated into that. What an interesting woman. Our second and final interview of the podcast today is Kathryn MacDowall, who is a Christian children's author. We spoke to her about her brand new kids book about the creation story, talked to her about her writing process, and also her list of favourite cafes in Sydney in which to write in. Here's that interview. Our guest on the pod today is Kathryn MacDowall, an Australian Christian author who's just released a brand new children's book called Let There Be Light, designed to help kids understand and discover the wonder of creation. Kathryn loves to communicate God's word to children and young people in an engaging and creative way, which includes over 20 children's ministry curriculum programs, amazing, used in thousands of churches across the world, and many devotional plans available on YouVersion. She also writes on more serious matters, being a specialist in writing child safety policies, procedures, and safety training. Kathryn, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So I've got to ask you, Kathryn, how did you end up being a writer?
I've always loved creating things. So storytelling has been a big part of obviously children's ministry. And from probably my teenage years, I was able to be involved in like beach missions, traveling around, telling Bible stories. So I learned how to be a storyteller then. And during the travels, we would write stories on the road on the way. So yeah, a lot of years of training, and really happy that that's got to be a big part of my life now.
Yeah, that's wonderful. What is your writing process like? Because we know that kids' books, they are quite short to read, but it doesn't mean that the writing process is any shorter than an adult novel, for example. In fact, it could even be longer.
Yeah, that's right. For a picture book, I would definitely start with the visuals. So I draw out almost like a storyboard and map out what needs to be sort of on each page and measure the story out that way. And then thinking about sort of those key moments, what happens when you turn the page. So in the start of Let There Be Light, it starts off in darkness, and then you turn the page and there's a big moment, let there be light. So I always think about the experience from the reader's perspective. And with preaching and teaching and communicating to kids, you know, I think about how would that go in a big group setting, and also how that experience would be for a parent and a child at home, or a child on their own. And this book is a rhyming book, so that adds a little complexity to the writing process. It's, you know, needs to be biblical, needs to be truthful, needs to be adventurous, and also to rhyme. So that was a fun part of the process, making sure that even the melody of each page and line works really well, the number of syllables in each line. So it was a bit of a challenge, but that's generally the process for a picture book.
A little off topic, but like you were talking about rhyming, was there a particular word that you really struggled with to rhyme? Was there that one bit in there that you were like, oh, how am I going to get this to work?
Yes, there's definitely some pages seem to come together quickly, phrases that, you know, within 10 or 15 minutes it all flows and works, and some that you really struggle with for days, and come back and rewrite and try again and think about it from a different way, try it upside down, try it back to front. And there's a line in this book where it's talking about God spreading the seas north, south, east and west. And I ended up, you know, normally you would start north, south, east, west, but I had to mix it up so that the last word would rhyme. But it keeps the reader on their toes.
I love that. And you sort of say on your website that you know all the best cafes in Sydney because that's, you know, where you write and that kind of thing sometimes. Is coffee a part of your writing process? And do you have a favourite cafe?
I've got lots of favourite cafes, mostly ones where there's a fair bit of hustle and bustle. I think working in kids ministry and in lively church offices, I've got used to concentrating when there's lots of noise and things happening around me. So in silence doesn't seem to work. So yeah, also being out in public, you've sat down at a cafe, you can't put on a load of washing, you can't get distracted. You can't walk away from your computer and leave it there. So I'm forced to focus and pay attention and try and get as much as I can done to make the most of how much money I've spent on food and drink at that cafe as well. Yeah, so cafes that have a nice interior, a comfy chair, a place to plug in the laptop, that's all top priority. So I'm not really a coffee drinker, but I know where to get a good hot chocolate and where they're happy to leave me working away for a few hours.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm not a coffee drinker either, so we'll have to exchange notes on the hot chocolates. Kathryn, the creation story, it's one of, I would say, the most well told Christian story, especially to kids. It's the first one you read in the children's Bible. What was it that inspired you to write this book? Did you want to look at it from a different perspective? What was it?
Yeah, I mean, beyond Genesis, 1 and 2, there's so much in the Bible about creation. There's heaps of verses all through the Psalms. You even see, how God interacts with nature all through the New Testament. So you see you read really vivid imagery that the Bible paints itself of how God breathes life into creation and how his hands stretch out the sky. So there's those incredible concepts that I just wanted to be able to capture that and bring that to that sort of normal 7-day narrative of creation, but just capturing the breadth of what the Bible actually says about creation. And that shows God's character and his heart for people too.
I have to say the illustrations are spectacular. They are gorgeous in this. But what I really loved is that they created kind of a personality. It had that each element, even like the trees or the moon or the stars, they all had personality in it through the illustrations. Did you have Mark in mind when you wrote it? What's that process like?
Yeah, it came afterwards, but we had seen Mark Kessler and his wife have this great company called Living and Powerful where they create Bible verse cards. So it's got the Bible verse on one side and then an illustration on the other side that brings it to life. And we, had seen his work there and knew he would just be perfect for this project. And it's the first picture book he's worked on, so he was super excited to throw himself into it. Yeah, it was an absolute honour and pleasure to work with him, and hopefully we get to work together a lot more in the future.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. Kathryn, we have been talking this episode about our favourite Christian reads, so obviously wanted to ask you those questions as well. Do you have a favourite Christian book? It can be kids, can be adults, whatever you like.
Definitely. I read a lot of kids' books, that's for sure. And I guess also it has inspired me over the years of communicating to children through storytelling would be like the Max Lucado kids storybook series. You Are Special and titles like that. The way they bring you into another world, but they're communicating the truth of God and the Bible to children through incredible storytelling.
You've mentioned sort of, the Max Lucado. Is that for one of your favourite Christian authors, or do you have another Christian author that you would consider your favourite, and why?
I don't know that I'd have a set favourite, but I've really enjoyed some of the kids' resources from Levi Lusko, and the Louis Giglio series is incredible. And I also have loved reading Judah Smith's books. I think they're incredibly well written and communicate Christian concepts really clearly. So great for kids and teenagers and new Christians. So I've really enjoyed sort of getting into those recently.
Fantastic. Well, Let There Be Light, written by Kathryn MacDowall, illustrated by Mark Kessler, and hand lettering by Shamila Joy. You can order your copy now from kathrynjoy.com.au, the Coorong website, or the Hillsong store. All of that is going to be available in the show notes. Kathryn, it has been a pleasure having you on Hope Book Club today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Kathryn was an absolute delight to chat to, and I got to say, I feel vindicated about my distaste for coffee now that I have a fellow hot chocolate lover in the midst. Well, that about wraps us up for today. That's all we've got time for. But join us next episode. We're going to be diving into Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmus. It's one of the favourite books of the last couple of years. We've had so many people request that we do it. We've recently done it for a Hope Book Club live event, but we kind of want to immortalise it into the podcast. So stick around for that. That's going to be coming in just a couple of weeks' time. And after that, we're going to be joined by two more fantastic Aussie Christian authors to continue this series. We'd love for you to be a part of our community as well. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. You can join our Hope Book Club Facebook group for more conversation, suggestions on what to read, and find out which books that we'll be reviewing next. You can head to the show notes for more information there. We would also love this podcast to reach more people, and the way to do that is to rate, review, subscribe, or share it with a friend that might love this conversation. Until next time, stay reading, and I'm going to take over Simone's quote just for this time. I hope she's going to be back next episode. This one from her favourite, C.S. Lewis. A children's story that can only be enjoyed by children is not a good children's story in the slightest. Catch you next time.
Congratulations! You made it to the very end of the episode. Now for a special treat. If you liked the sound of Kathryn MacDowall or Trudy Adams' books, you can win one for yourself. For a chance to win a copy of Let There Be Light by Kathryn MacDowall or all three of the Armoured Butterfly series by Trudy Adams, go to hope1032.com.au/win to enter. That's hope1032.com.au/win. Competition closes Thursday, 16th of November, 2023.
Hope 1032. Thanks for listening.